Love it or hate it, the truth is that we were all called and created to be a reflection of something much bigger than ourselves. And that something is the Most High God. We were all made in his image, and we are his reflection on the earth. And by creating us as his image, he gave humans the most honorable position above all the creatures. And that is to be his image bearers, his representation, to bear his name. What other place of honor could we ask for? This is how the story of humanity begins, with honor. We need to be careful about how we talk about humanity. We started with honor, not shame. Okay, I hear a couple of y'all. And as we read on from Genesis 1, we get to the Eden narratives where Adam and Eve were created and they were told to work and keep the garden, which is the same language being used for the priest in the temple in the biblical story. So Adam and Eve were given these roles of honor to be priests in his garden temple. And then the last statement of Genesis 2, it states, Adam and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. They were completely seen and vulnerable, not only before God, but before one another. And they felt no shame about it. And as many of you know, the story took a sharp turn. As soon as the serpent figure enters the scene, his point and his plan is to bring shame into the human story where it doesn't belong. So he tempts and deceives the woman to eat of the forbidden tree, and the man willingly follows. And everything changed just in a few moments. Sin entered the story of humanity because they dishonored God by disobeying him. And sin is ultimately disloyalty to God. It's the breaking of relationship with him. At the core of sin is like a form of idolatry, right? That is an abandoning of the God whose image that we bear. So this might sound weird, but bear with me, okay? Don't email me. Since shame impacted who you represented, Adam and Eve's disobedience was witnessed by the rest of creation, and it brought shame to the reputation of the one whose image they bore. And I know that's probably a concept that is not so easily grasped by some of us, but Adam and Eve were the first to do what the people throughout the biblical story, and even in the extra biblical story, would do. That is why God was keen to redeem his reputation through a perfectly obedient human who would honor his name correctly. But sin doesn't actually change God's honor. Let me get that straight. Sin is just the failure to give him his due honor, his due praise, his due adoration, his due allegiance. And as a result of their disobedience, we read in Genesis 3, then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden of the cool of the day. And they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. So the humans attempted to cover and hide from God, as if you can do that, displaying that they now felt shame. Shame makes you duck and cover. You don't want to be seen. You want to hide, right? I know I'm not the only one in this room. They did what we all try to do when we sin. We try to cover and hide ourselves from God and even from one another. Shame makes us not want to be seen on any level. And this isn't just a physical reality, this is an emotional reality as well. But the narrative continues. Shame was the consequence of their disloyalty, and the fall from honor to a place of shame was tragic. They went from creatures that walked with God to creatures that now try to hide from him. But God pursues and invites them back in to honor by saying, where are you? Who told you you were naked? Did you eat from the tree that I told you not to eat from? Those are questions God isn't accusing. He's asking questions. He's inviting them back in. Even though they're at wrong, come back to me. And then he goes to explain the consequences of what they just participated in. Pain, difficulty, and death would now be a part of their reality in this world, and all that would come after them. Yet God was merciful to them as he provided animal skins as clothing. A couple of implicit things to note. Another creature's life was taken to cover their shame, to cover their nakedness. Remember that. They were exiled from the garden and were barred access to the tree of life, and shame has been integrated into the human story. And I know what you're thinking. What does this have to do with the cross, Hakeem? I'm glad you asked. Full of questions this morning. God did not leave them without hope. He decreed the remedy in verse 15. He said, I will put enmity. As he's cursing the serpent, he doesn't curse the humans, but he curses the serpent. And he says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers, and he will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. Oh, we about to get fired up this morning. So from that moment on through the rest of the Hebrew Bible, God worked through a chosen family who he attached his namesake and his reputation before the world to. So when the family of Abraham stepped into who God called them to be, it brought honor to his name before the nations. But when they failed to do so, shame reoccurred in the story. Imagine what it felt like when they were rampant in their idolatry and then were exiled from the land before the nations, y'all. Think about what the nations were thinking about Yahweh. Isn't that the God that brought you out of Egypt? That's the God who did all of those plagues, destroying the Egyptian gods? That's the God who allowed you to usher into this promised land, gave you milk and honey? That's the God that provided for y'all for 40 years in the wilderness. He allowed you to get exiled? Shame. Okay, y'all not with me yet. That's fine. They profaned his name. And God don't play about his name or his reputation. And despite the shortcomings of humanity, from Genesis 3 to Malachi, he was going to make sure that the serpent crusher arrived.